Hello and welcome to yet another episode of News in Focus. I'm Miriam Kanyugo. Well, tonight we'll be discussing investment and more importantly, investment in the housing sector. Growth has really grown in regards to urban and development, and technology is coming in, and people are moving from the rural areas to the urban areas, and more importantly, they're looking for housing. And also in the rural areas, they're looking for better housing. But the question is, are we going to have quality and also at an affordable price? Tonight, we'll be looking at investment and if we can actually be able to reach that goal of having an affordable house in your home. So welcoming you to this is Robert Knutson, who will be discussing together with me, President and Founder of Omni Housing. Welcome.
Thank you.
And together we have the second time welcoming Patrick Griswold, the president of Why Africa Now.
Thank you, Mary.
Let me start with Patrick. Before we were together here and we talked about investment and more importantly the Western world and how they can come in and invest. Today, as we're looking at housing, there's a growing demand in Africa and more importantly also in Kenya on housing. I don't know how far you've gone in regards to the investment aspect in the Western world as far as we are talking today.
Okay, Mary, the biggest challenge I had in housing is priority, one of the sectors that I really focused on over the last 2 years. And as we've discussed before, you know, the U.S. side of things, it's not just finding the right product, it's finding the people that understand Africa, its needs, requirements, etc. So while I've probably talked to up to 100 different housing companies. And while there was some, you know, good quality products and things like that, the people just did not have the mindset with regard to Africa and do not understand what is happening in Africa and the important needs that Africa has with regard to affordable housing. And I came across Omni Housing and I liked the products. And so I started some dialogue with them, and immediately when I spoke to them, they understood Africa, and that's the biggest hurdle.
Now that brings me to Omni Housing President Knutson. Today I've learned how to pronounce your name a fresh way. Let's understand what actually made you talk about more about Omni Housing before we go to what actually prompted you to go ahead and do this.
Well, I started out from graduate business school at Merrill Lynch Investment Banking and Infrastructure in New York City in 1977. And after 6 years of formal training in finance and joining Merrill Lynch's elite team in infrastructure, the first thing Merrill Lynch did was, again, put me into school for another 18 months so that I could learn every facet, every avenue of financing, and financing at the lowest rate possible for housing, hospitals, schools, roads, and power plants. So I'm honored and pleased that I received such a great education from one of the premier investment banks of the world, Merrill Lynch, which is now combined with Bank of America, right in the heart of Wall Street.
So what prompted you eventually to actually think, okay, let me go ahead and do housing that are affordable and also in quality?
Well, being one of the elder members of a family of 11 and having helped my mom and dad along with my older brothers and sisters, I've always loved helping younger folks climbing the ladder. And this is an extension of that effort that my mom and dad instilled in me as a young man to help younger, less fortunate people. So as I continued along my career in Wall Street, I was hired by other major investment banks because of my skills in financing, housing, and energy projects throughout the world. And before I formed my own company, I worked at 5 of the largest investment banks in the world: Merrill Lynch, Prudential, Nikko Securities from Japan, Societe Generale from France, and Royal Bank of Canada. Then I formed my own company because I had such a broad canvas of relationships throughout the world, and I wanted to be my own boss. So I formed Omni Housing to help finance and build low-cost housing for less fortunate people throughout the world.
How did you come into the material aspect? How did you get to?
Once again, I'm fortunate in that, and perhaps in many ways, my father has been my greatest teacher. And my father and grandfather were major contractors for the U.S. Navy, producing boats during World War II and the Korean conflict. That extended out to where they became very heavily involved in fiberglass and built fiberglass boats. So I grew up in a fiberglass factory, and although I became an investment banker, my teenage and early college education is in fiberglass under the tutelage of my father's managers and other co-workers that taught me the trade.
Okay, so why Africa? Maybe I could also ask why Africa in regards to, yes, these houses, I believe they're for Africa and also for the less fortunate nations for the housing purposes.
Well, I cut my teeth in Africa and Nigeria, and perhaps it's the best lesson. If you want to go to Africa, go to Nigeria first, because in many ways it's the hardest. The people of Nigeria are fantastic, but there is 175 million people there. It's certainly very prosperous and hardworking people. But as I traveled through Africa, Africa is a continent, not a country. It's 54 countries. It has a workforce approaching 1 billion people, and it's many different cultures. And I found Africa fascinating. And just like I'm from originally a very large family, I wanted to become a member of the African family. So I proceeded throughout Africa and traveling. I came to Uganda and Kenya and Tanzania, and I believe I have discovered perhaps the most beautiful place in the world.
Well, you call these houses tropicalized houses. Maybe you could explain more a little bit about that.
Well, this house, we are fortunate in that the United States Department of Defense and Boeing Aerospace Corporation developed this with us in building a satellite monitoring base on the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands 15 years ago. So our house has been developed with the U.S. Department of Defense and Boeing Aerospace and has been used for over 15 years. We're fortunate in that our house has also been approved by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Managing Authority, TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, the International Building Code, and the Government of India. And the reason why we call it a tropicalized house is originally I called it the refrigerated house because it's very much like your refrigerator. And
does that mean it's
businessman in Nigeria said, you know, that's really a tropicalized house. So I called it the tropicalized house, and if you go on Google search and hit up the tropicalized house, there you'll see it. So it's built like a refrigerator, but obviously it's a lot larger than your refrigerator, and it's absolutely perfect for the tropicalized climates because unlike your standard stone and brick and cement house, which heats up like an oven by 11 o'clock in the morning, our house has R28 insulation and stays nice and cool like you're inside a refrigerator without the motor. So we call it the tropicalized
Yeah, that's
house.
what I wanted to ask. Someone might get confused when you say more like a refrigerator. Or would it be that cold as a refrigerator, or?
Regrettably, it's not that cold. When it's 100 degrees out, you want it to be a refrigerator, but it's a refrigerator. It's a house built like a refrigerator, but it doesn't have the refrigeration motor, so you will not be too cold.
Okay, so let's talk about Africa, whereby we have floods and we have fire. Can it withstand floods or can it withstand fire?
Our house is fireproof and it's bulletproof. You can make it without bulletproofing or with bulletproofing, and right now we're working on making it blast-proof for some Middle East customers. So yes, it is fireproof and it is very, very durable. And we have a video that shows it's much more durable than concrete block.
Okay, how has the market been when you came to Africa? How has it been? And also in Asian countries, how's the market been in regards to explaining that what you're bringing to the market, it's something that can actually really go with the demand that is already there?
A very educated source is McKinsey and Company. And McKinsey and Company did a study on Procter & Gamble and the introduction of diapers into Kenya and Nigeria. It was a learning process, and that's what our product is also. It's a learning process on how to get used to a new building process, one that has for many decades now been used to block and concrete, and the folks that are looking at our house and now ordering our house, the ones that are looking at it are getting used to the new technology, and the ones that are ordering it see the benefits and the merits of it rather quickly, which we're very happy about. And so it's a learning process, and we're getting there.
How is it let me go now to Patrick. How is it in the U.S. and also in the Western world, but now this time we're talking about Europe? How is it? How is the reception of the whole idea of affordable housing?
Yeah, it's an issue everywhere in the world, and you will find that if the U.S. is 50 states, and you have a lot higher GDPs in some areas than that, and these affordable houses are bought and lived in by people throughout the United States in the lower income areas and very well received, especially when they've passed the approval of the U.S. government. A lot of Americans lived in them overseas while working for Boeing Corporation and the Department of Defense, and have even returned to the U.S. to the same type of house.
Okay, so let's talk about in regards to now when you come to Kenya, are you looking probably to actually bring it out in terms of building and ensuring that at least you bring an affordable housing here, but not necessarily around the rural areas? Are you looking to the towns? By this I'm asking because is it a story building? Is it like a flat, or is it a bungalow? What are you looking probably? Which sector are you looking to?
Well, everything. They have a full line of housing. But I think maybe the main challenges have been, with regard to affordable housing, is obviously, the cost. And then, we want to manufacture them locally. I mean, Kenya can't afford to import 1 million, 2 million houses. But what I've understood over the last few days, we've talked to some bankers, business people, everyone. It opened my eyes to the fact that it takes too long to build houses in Kenya and other areas of Africa. This house is basically produced in a factory, and it can be assembled in 4.5 hours. You've seen the video on the website. So that's a big advantage. So I think not only, people will have to get used to new technology, and we're working on that market acceptance, but when they see how fast the houses can go up, this is going to open a lot of eyes and increase demand. Because the shortfall in Kenya today is over 150,000 units a year. Kenya has yet to build 50,000 houses in 1 year.
Let's talk about challenges, maybe challenges you've encountered in regards to now bringing out the project out. What are some of the challenges you encounter in Africa, more importantly?
The import duties. I want to point out that Omni Housing is a three-pronged effort and helps Kenya in 3 ways. First of all, we build very durable, proven, low-cost housing, which houses families and helps them live a better life. Second of all, in that process, we create a lot of jobs, permanent, semi-skilled jobs for young and old and middle-aged alike, men and women alike, to learn permanent skills to help house people in their own community, in their own country. And the third thing I'm very excited about is we teach. My second wish in life was to be a teacher. And we have a team of people at Omni Housing that teach young and old alike, men and women alike, how to build our house. And the teaching process, we have gotten down to 3 to 4 months when we can teach workers how to build our houses from A to Z. So it's really exciting because we provide low-cost housing, which is greatly needed. We provide jobs, which is greatly needed. and we train them, and we have videos in English and in the local language that they can refer back to as they want to understand each job function in building the structures.
Maybe you could go to affordability. How much probably would a one-bedroom, let me go with a standard one-bedroom cost me?
Well, being a mortgage banker and working in the mixing bowls of Wall Street in Manhattan for many, many years, and being on the cutting edge of the creation of Freddie Mac debentures and the development of Fannie Mae mortgage product and Freddie Mac mortgage product and the private label of Citibank mortgage product and all the other private labels, I was lucky enough to be at the right time in the right place and doing my homework, keeping my nose to the grindstone, and learning the intricate skills, again, after Merrill Lynch's municipal bond and infrastructure training school. When I returned from Nigeria in February of 13, and as the snow was coming down outside, and I looked out my office, I started to write Mommy May. Mommy May, M-O-M-M-I-E, new word, M-A-E. Mommy May is the Ginnie Mae of Africa that I wrote, and I dedicate it to all the families in Africa. And it's a way in which we can lower the skyrocket levels of interest rates in Africa. And if you read Mommy May, you'll see the points in which we can get interest rates lowered so that our one-bedroom condo of $9,987 under Mommy May, we can get the yield down to at least 7.7%. Now, currently, mortgage rates in Africa range from 16, 18, to 20 to 25. And this must come down. We must lower the rate of affordability for the average African family and young person so that they can have their own dwelling. And Mommy May lays out the principles and the procedures to get that rate lower. And I invite all of your viewers to read it on the internet. M-O-M-M-Y, new word, M-A-E, Mommy May.
Okay. I don't know whether, Patrick, you've also encountered challenges at the same time. We talked about them earlier in regards to bringing in investors, but now when it comes to housing, if I may streamline it to housing, what are some of the challenges that you're still experiencing? Apart from we have Knutson had an ambition and a goal to actually help the needy, but are you also still experiencing such challenges like you talked about earlier?
Yes, as I explained, most of the challenges have been with regard to cost, the affordability, and then building, the length of time to produce a house. And I might add that we've had some conversations this week, and it's very exciting that some of the big financial institutions, things are moving along, and they're positioning themselves to actually become property developers, because they want to accelerate the rate of building in the country. So this is going to be a big help. So with Robert's expertise in the mortgage area is crucial. We just came from a meeting with the National Chamber of Commerce people to give them assistance and find a way, even looking at bringing in foreign investors to, some of the money maybe from the US to fund Mommy May to bring the mortgage rates down. But I must add that the local financial institutions and a lot of other organizations are getting involved in housing, understand it. So with all of these efforts, we'll get this whole thing going, and it'll pick up speed very quickly.
Maybe one last thing I would ask in regards to when you'd like to spearhead this project. Are you looking forward to actually also work with the different organizations just to make sure that it actually, the project materializes in Africa?
Well, being an institutional salesman and trader and analyst, it's amazing that everyone is interested in this, and it's very heartwarming. I work with very demanding portfolio managers, and particularly Jeffrey Gunlack of Double Line, who's one of the premier portfolio managers in the world, and Barron's magazine listed him as the king of bonds. He said to me, Robert, this is going to be big. This is great. And Jeffrey, everyone knows in the financial community, is a financial genius and is widely followed in the global press concerning mortgages, housing, and interest rates. So I'm comforted by those thoughts. The demand for housing in the frontier markets and in Africa is simply overwhelming, and there's been many World Bank reports and other government agency reports that point this out. And Africa, according to McKinsey, 80% of the people in Africa live in substandard housing. So that leaves us plenty of work to do in many countries, and we're happy to work as hard as we can wherever possible throughout this giant, beautiful continent.
Okay, I'll just be notified that our time is almost up. I need to, at least to take 1 minute to talk about what is your proposal in regards to, you talked about the challenge of import duty, and especially in African countries. You could talk about what is your proposal in regards to that as you summarize.
Our biggest job is education. And as we educate the people and the decision makers around Africa, we find a welcome audience that wants to embrace this product, and we're in that process. We need to build factories on location in Africa so we don't have import duties, and so that we can hire and create a lot of semi-skilled jobs and teach a lot of young folks and medium-aged folks how to build this product. We're very happy and excited about that.
Okay, thank you so much, Patrick. If you have something at least you'd like to add on top of what Kandatsun has said, or something that you feel you really need to say it, this is the time.
I think Robert has demonstrated that it's more than just business. And I think that's the key factor to make this successful. A lot of people are just looking for the business, so that's why they maybe stay in their markets outside of Africa, because they focus on that. But you really have to be dedicated to the people and the project and the goals that we have to make this successful.
Okay, thank you so much for coming to News in Focus at Ebro Africa TV. We hope to actually see you when we come to the real housing project itself. So thank you so much, viewers, for being with us here at News in Focus. I've been your presenter, Miriam Kanyugo. I do believe you've learned something in regards to affordable housing, and I believe you're also looking forward to ensure you have an affordable housing and you're going to look out for it. Do have yourself a wonderful viewing and enjoy your night. Good night. Thank you so much for coming.